Some moments slice your life cleanly into a before and an after. For me, that moment arrived not with a thunderclap, but with the quiet blue glow of my phone screen in a darkened room. It was an image. A familiar, grainy, black and white image that had brought me more joy than I had ever known. It was the first picture of my baby, a tiny, perfect being floating in a sea of possibility. It was my baby, but it was her announcement. My sister-in-law Chloe had posted it. Her caption was full of breathless exclamation points and heart emojis. Our little miracle is on the way. Mark and I are overjoyed to finally share our news. #pregnant, #blessed, #baby on the way. I read the words again and again, but they wouldn't make sense. My husband's name was David, not Mark. And the photo, my heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I knew that photo. I knew the exact curve of that tiny spine, the precise placement of the little nub that was a developing arm. I had spent hours staring at it, tracing it with my finger, whispering promises to the life within me. It was the photo my doctor had printed for me just last week, the one I had carefully placed in a silver frame on my nightstand. And there it was on Chloe's social media page, presented to the world as her own. A profound, bone-deep coldness spread through my limbs. It was a violation so bizarre, so audacious that my mind couldn't quite grasp it. It was like looking in a mirror and seeing someone else's face staring back at you. Before that moment, my life had finally, after a long and brutal winter, found its spring. My husband, David, and I had been married for 6 years, and for 5 of those years we had been trying to start a family. That journey is a story in itself, a quiet narrative of whispered hopes and crushing disappointments. It was a story told in the sterile white of doctors' offices, the smell of antiseptic, the cold touch of ultrasound wands on my belly, searching for a life that wasn't there. Each month was a tiny lifetime of hope followed by a familiar, private grief. David was my rock through it all. He was a man of quiet strength, a landscape architect whose hands were usually covered in dirt but were always gentle with me. After every negative test, he would hold me, his big warm frame a shield against the world, and say, "It's okay, Sarah, it's okay. We're in this together." He never blamed me, never showed a flicker of frustration even when I was drowning in my own feelings of failure, of being broken. We lived in a small, cozy house with a garden that was David's masterpiece. It was full of climbing roses and lavender bushes that scented the air on summer evenings. Our life was good. It was filled with love, with shared meals, with the comfortable silence of 2 people who know each other's souls. But there was always a quiet ache, a space at our table that felt empty. My side of the family lived across the country, so my in-laws became my local support system. David's mother, Martha, was a kind woman, if a bit flustered, always trying to smooth over any family friction. And then there was Chloe, David's younger sister. Chloe was a firework. She was vibrant and loud, a whirlwind of drama and laughter who craved the spotlight in any room she entered. If someone told a story about a vacation to Florida, Chloe would have a story about backpacking through Thailand. If a cousin got engaged, Chloe would announce she was training for a marathon a week later. It wasn't malicious, or so we told ourselves. It was just Chloe. She had an insatiable need to be the center of every conversation, the main character in every story. We had all learned to navigate it, to smile and nod and let her have her moment, because confronting her only led to tears and accusations of being jealous of her free spirit. She had a string of boyfriends, a series of short-lived, passionate careers, and a flair for making every minor inconvenience sound like a Shakespearean tragedy. David treated her with a kind of weary, affectionate exasperation. "That's just Chloe," he'd say with a sigh, shaking his head after she'd hijacked yet another family dinner with a dramatic tale of her latest crisis. So when, after our second round of IVF, the doctor finally gave us the news we had been praying for, we decided to keep it to ourselves for a little while. For a few precious weeks it was our secret, our joy. We'd sit in the garden in the evenings, and David would rest his hand on my still flat stomach, a look of pure, unadulterated wonder on his face. It felt sacred. At 12 weeks, after a perfect ultrasound where we heard the strong, thrumming beat of our baby's heart, we knew it was time to share our news. We invited Martha, Chloe, and her new boyfriend, a quiet man named Kevin, over for dinner. I was nervous, my hands trembling slightly as I set the table. This was the moment I had dreamed of for years. After we finished eating, David stood up, his arm around my shoulders. "Mom, Chloe," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Sarah and I have some news. We're pregnant." Martha burst into happy tears, rushing over to hug us both. "Oh, my darlings, I'm so happy for you. I knew it would happen." Chloe was quiet. For the first time I could remember, she was utterly still. She stared at us, a strange, unreadable expression on her face. It wasn't joy. It wasn't jealousy. It was an intense, calculating stillness, as if she were a computer processing a new complex variable. "Wow," she finally said, her voice flat. "That's great. I'm happy for you." Later, as I was showing Martha the ultrasound photo, the very first picture of her grandchild, Chloe came and stood behind me, peering over my shoulder. "Can I see that?" she asked. I handed it to her. She held the small, glossy photo in her hands, her thumb stroking the edge. She didn't look at me. She just stared at the image, at the tiny shape that was my whole world. "It's amazing what they can see, isn't it?" she murmured. "So small." She handed it back after a moment that felt strangely long. The warmth of the family's celebration felt a million miles away. All I could feel was the chill from that brief, odd encounter. A tiny warning bell I couldn't yet understand. I dismissed it. It was just Chloe, I told myself. She wasn't used to someone else having the spotlight. He would come around. I was so wrong. "I have a doctor's appointment this morning to confirm it. But she won't show him any paperwork. He said she's being really secretive. He asked me if she'd said anything to us." I felt a knot of unease tighten in my stomach. "Pregnant too? The same week as us." "I know," David said, turning to face me. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's Chloe. She probably heard us talking about it and got it in her head. You know how she is. She gets an idea and just runs with it. It'll blow over." But it didn't feel right. It was one thing to exaggerate a story or to one-up someone's news. But this felt different. It felt calculated. The next day my mother-in-law Martha called. She was flustered, her voice a high-pitched mix of excitement and confusion. "Sarah dear, did you know? Chloe's pregnant. Can you believe it? Both my babies having babies at the same time. It's a miracle." "Oh," I said, my own voice sounding hollow in my ear. "She told you." "She just left." He was so excited she had to come tell me in person. "She said she's about 12 weeks along, just like you. Isn't that the sweetest thing? Your children will be like twins." 12 weeks. The words hit me like a physical blow. The same as me. It was too much of a coincidence. It was a lie. A strange, elaborate, and profoundly unsettling lie. "Martha," I began, choosing my words carefully. "Are you sure? Did she show you anything? A test or a photo?" "Oh no dear," she said. She was so emotional she left everything at home. But she described it all to me. The little heartbeat, the way the baby looked on the screen. It sounded just like when you described your appointment. "She's just glowing, Sarah." I haven't seen her this happy in years. My hand went to my own stomach, a protective, instinctual gesture. A cold dread was creeping up my spine. Why would she do this? What did she hope to gain? It was a lie that was bound to unravel. Sooner or later, the truth would come out. A pregnancy isn't something you can fake forever. I tried to tell myself it was just a fantasy, a desperate cry for attention that she would abandon once she realized how impossible it was. David agreed. We decided not to confront her. Not to cause a massive family argument over something that was so clearly a delusion. To challenge her would be to give her the drama she craved. We would ignore it. We would focus on our baby, on our happiness, and let Chloe's strange story die a natural death. That was our mistake. We underestimated her. We underestimated her desperation. We thought she was telling a story. We had no idea she was about to publish it to the world. A few nights later, I was having trouble sleeping. The mixture of hormones and anxiety was a potent combination. I was scrolling aimlessly on my phone. The soft blue light a small comfort in the dark. I saw that Chloe had posted something new. I clicked on her profile, my thumb hovering over the screen. And that's when I saw it. The photo. My photo. It was a screenshot, slightly pixelated but unmistakable. She had clearly taken a picture of the physical copy I had. Maybe that night at dinner when she'd asked to see it. Perhaps she'd taken it from my nightstand when she'd visited last. The thought made my skin crawl. Underneath the picture of my baby were dozens of comments. "Congratulations, Chloe. So exciting. Auntie. Best news ever. So thrilled for you and Mark." Mark. I blinked. Not Kevin. Mark. She had tagged a man I'd never even heard of. I clicked on his profile. It was private, but his profile picture showed a handsome, smiling man with his arm around Chloe. Her latest boyfriend, Kevin, was nowhere in sight. The sheer complexity of the lie was dizzying. She wasn't just faking a pregnancy. She was faking a whole relationship to go along with it. She had stolen the one tangible proof of my miracle and was using it as a prop in her own bizarre imaginary life. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with morning sickness. I nudged David awake. "David," I whispered, my voice shaking. "You need to see this." He sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. I handed him the phone. I watched his face as he read the post. I saw the confusion melt into disbelief, and then into a slow, simmering anger I had rarely seen in him. He looked from the phone to me, his eyes wide with a shared horror. "She stole our picture," he said, his voice a low growl. She stole our baby's picture. The bubble we had built around ourselves had just been shattered, and the person holding the pin was his sister. The cold reality of it settled in. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a harmless cry for attention. This was a theft of the most intimate, precious thing we had. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to my soul that this was only the beginning. He was there the next morning. He explained what Chloe had done, his voice carefully neutral, framing it as a point of confusion rather than an accusation. Kevin was quiet on the other end of the line for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with a mix of embarrassment and hurt. "I broke up with her 2 days ago," he said. "I couldn't take it anymore. She kept talking about this baby, but it was all so vague. She said she felt sick, but then I'd see her eating things that would make anyone with morning sickness run for the hills. When I asked to go to the next doctor's appointment with her, she freaked out. She said I was trying to control her." "What about Mark?" David asked. "That's the craziest part," Kevin said with a bitter laugh. "Mark is her ex from college. They dated for like 6 months 5 years ago. He lives in Oregon now. He got married last year. I saw it on his wife's blog. Unless he's a bigamist with a secret life, I can guarantee you he's not the father of Chloe's imaginary baby." It was worse than I thought. She wasn't just lying to her family. She was using a real person's identity, a married man, to prop up her fantasy. She was building a house of cards on a foundation of pure delusion. The next day, I made an excuse to visit my mother-in-law. I needed to see how deep the roots of this lie had gone. I found Martha in her kitchen, humming to herself as she leafed through a knitting magazine. "Sarah dear, come in," she said, her face lighting up. "I was just looking at patterns for baby blankets. I'll have to make 2 now, one in blue and one in pink, or maybe both in yellow to be safe." Her innocent joy was like a knife in my heart. "Martha," I started gently, "David and I are a little concerned about Chloe." Her smile faltered. "Concerned? Why, she's never been happier. It's just, this all seems very sudden, and the timing, it's a bit of a coincidence, isn't it?" Martha's expression turned defensive, a familiar look she got whenever she felt one of her children was being criticized. "It's a miracle," she insisted. "A blessing. You should be happy for your sister. It's wonderful that your babies will grow up together." "I am happy for her if it's true," I said, my voice softer than I felt. "But she's been hurt so many times. I just worry she's getting her hopes up." "Did she tell you who the father is?" "Oh, some lovely man named Mark," she said, beaming again. She showed me his picture. "Very handsome. He's an architect," she said. "He's traveling for work at the moment, but he'll be back soon." She's been talking to him every day. An architect? Of course, just like David. She wasn't just stealing my pregnancy. She was mirroring my entire life, creating a bizarre, funhouse mirror version of my happiness. I felt a chill as I realized the extent of her fantasy. She wasn't just telling a lie. She was living it. In her mind, she had the successful architect husband, the miracle pregnancy, the perfect life she thought I had. And my baby's ultrasound photo was her proof, her ticket into that reality. The conversation with Martha confirmed my fears. Chloe had insulated herself with a wall of plausible half-truths and emotional manipulation. My mother-in-law desperately wanted to believe in this happy family miracle, and Chloe was giving her exactly what she wanted to hear. Any attempt to introduce the truth would be met with fierce resistance. Martha would see it as an attack, as jealousy. I left her house feeling more isolated than ever. We were on an island, David and I, and the waters around us were rising with Chloe's lies. That evening, I sat on my laptop, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I had an idea, a risky one, but it was the only way I could think of to fight back without creating a family war. I couldn't attack her story head-on, but I could start to gently and carefully dismantle it from the inside. I opened a new social media account with a generic name and a profile picture of a flower. I navigated to Mark's wife's blog. It was public, a cheerful, well-maintained chronicle of their life in Oregon. They had a golden retriever. They went hiking. They had just celebrated their first wedding anniversary. I found the contact page and an email address for inquiries. My heart was pounding. This felt like a terrible invasion of a stranger's life. But what choice did I have? Chloe had dragged this innocent woman into her drama, and she was the only one besides us who held a piece of the truth. I took a deep breath and began to type. "Dear Mrs. Collins," I wrote, my hands shaking. "You don't know me, but I am writing to you about a very strange and sensitive situation involving your husband. My name is Sarah, and my sister-in-law, Chloe, has recently begun to tell our family that she is pregnant with his child." I laid out the story as simply and calmly as I could, focusing on the facts. I didn't know if she would believe me. I didn't know if she would reply. I might have just been screaming into the void. But as I hit send, I felt a flicker of power return to me. Chloe had stolen my voice, my story, Now I was starting to take it back. I wasn't just a victim of her fantasy anymore. I was becoming the author of its conclusion. The days after I sent that email were fraught with a tense, quiet waiting. Every notification on my phone made my heart leap into my throat. David and I were in a state of suspended animation, going through the motions of our lives while this enormous unspoken drama churned beneath the surface. We avoided family gatherings. I let my mother-in-law's calls go to voicemail more often than not, unable to bear her cheerful talk of knitting 2 sets of baby booties. The lie was a living thing now, a guest in their house, and I couldn't stand to be in the same room with it. Chloe meanwhile was flourishing. Her social media became a shrine to her supposed pregnancy. She posted about her cravings for exotic, expensive foods she'd then photograph at restaurants, her morning sickness, which never seemed to stop her from attending parties, and her deep philosophical thoughts on impending motherhood. It was a masterclass in performative pregnancy, and her audience was thoroughly enjoying it. Friends and distant relatives who we hadn't heard from in years were flooding her comments with congratulations and well wishes. Each post was a slight, sharp jab, a reminder that she was parading our private joy as her own public spectacle. The most painful part was seeing our own friends, people who had known about our struggles, liking and commenting on her posts. They didn't know. How could they? To the outside world, it seemed like a happy coincidence. 2 sisters-in-law sharing a beautiful journey. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon I received a reply. The subject line was, "Regarding your email." My hands were trembling so badly that I could barely click it open. It was from Mark's wife, a woman named Jessica. Her email was short, and her tone was a mixture of icy fury and controlled panic. "Miss Peterson," it began, "I have received your email. I'm not sure if this is some kind of sick prank, but I've shown your message to my husband, and we are both deeply disturbed. Mark has not seen or spoken to Chloe in over 5 years. I am attaching a screenshot of his blocked contacts list on his phone. Her name has been on it since 2018 after she engaged in some unsettling behavior following their breakup. We will be consulting our attorney about this defamatory and frankly psychotic claim. Do not contact us again." Attached was a screenshot just as she'd said. There was Chloe's name blocked. And beneath the email was another attachment. It was a photo. A candid shot of Jessica and Mark on a recent hiking trip, dated 2 weeks prior. They were smiling, happy. And Jessica was visibly, undeniably pregnant. She was much farther along than I was, her baby bump round and prominent under her t-shirt. I sat back stunned. The pieces of the puzzle were rearranging themselves into a picture far more twisted than I had imagined. Chloe hadn't just picked a random ex to be her fictional baby's father. She had chosen one whose wife was actually pregnant. It was a deliberate, almost vampiric act of appropriation. She wasn't just mirroring my life, she was trying to steal Jessica's too. She was creating a composite, a Frankenstein's monster of a life, stitched together from the happiness of others. The revelation that Chloe had been blocked for unsettling behavior years ago was another chilling piece of the puzzle. This wasn't a new pattern. This was an escalation. I showed the email to David. He read it, his face growing paler with each word. The photo of the happy, pregnant couple at the end seemed to hit him the hardest. "My God," he whispered. "She's out of her mind. She's really truly unwell." The anger he had felt was now being eclipsed by a profound, sorrowful fear for his sister. But it was overshadowed by his fierce, protective instinct for me and for our child. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "This changes things. This isn't just a family squabble anymore. He's harassing these people. We have proof now. Real, concrete proof. But what were we going to do with it? We couldn't just forward the email to Martha. She would see it as an attack from a crazy, jealous woman on the internet. Chloe would deny ever knowing Jessica was pregnant and claim it was a horrible coincidence. She would twist Jessica's anger into proof that she was the one being harassed. No, a private confrontation wouldn't work. The lie had been built in public. It had to be dismantled in public. The opportunity came a week later in the form of an invitation. Martha, in her blissful ignorance, had decided to throw a joint baby celebration party for me and Chloe. She called it a grandma's double blessing brunch. The thought of it made my stomach turn. Standing next to Chloe, smiling for photos, while she pretended the baby under my heart was also under hers. It was unthinkable. I told David I wouldn't go. "We have to," he said quietly. "Sarah, we have to go. It's the only way." I looked at him confused. Why? To be humiliated? To stand there and let her lie to everyone's faces? "No," he said, and I saw a spark in his eye, a glimmer of the strategic mind he used to design his beautiful, complex gardens. We go, and we bring a gift for Chloe. He laid out the plan. It was simple. It was quiet. It was devastating. It wasn't about screaming, crying, or sending angry emails. It was about presenting one simple, undeniable truth, wrapped up in a pretty bow. The day of the party was bright and sunny, a cruel contrast to the storm brewing inside me. My hands were cold as I got dressed. I chose a simple blue dress that showed the slight, definite curve of my belly. For the first time, I wanted it to be seen. I wanted it to be real. We walked into my mother-in-law's house. It was filled with family, friends, and relatives, a sea of smiling, congratulatory faces. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and baked goods. And there, in the center of the living room, was Chloe. She was holding court, one hand resting possessively on her perfectly flat stomach. She was wearing a flowing empire waist dress, the classic uniform of a woman trying to suggest a bump that wasn't there. She saw us and her face broke into a brilliant, false smile. "Sarah, David, you made it." She came over and hugged me, her cheek cold against mine. "Isn't this wonderful?" she whispered conspiratorially. "Our babies are going to be best friends." I just stared at her, my heart a block of ice. I couldn't find the words to respond. David put a protective arm around me. "It's something, all right," he said, his voice neutral. After an hour of stilted conversation and forced smiles, Martha clinked a glass for attention. "It's time for gifts," she announced happily. Presents were piled on a table, all tiny baby clothes and soft blankets. I watched as Chloe opened gift after gift, exclaiming with delight, holding up tiny onesies to her flat stomach. The charade was so complete, so convincing, I almost felt like I was the one going insane. Finally, David stood up. "We have a gift for Chloe too," he said, his voice cutting through the chatter. All eyes turned to us. He walked to the gift table and picked up a beautifully wrapped box we had placed there earlier. He handed it to Chloe. "We wanted to get you something special," he said. "Something to help you document your journey." Chloe's smile was bright, triumphant. He thought we were finally playing along. She thought she had won. She tore open the wrapping paper. Inside the box was a large, expensive-looking digital photo frame. "Oh, you guys," she gushed. "It's beautiful. Thank you. We took the liberty of preloading it for you," David said, his voice calm and even. "To get you started." He took a small remote from his pocket. "It's already plugged in. Let me just turn it on." He pressed a button. The screen on the frame, which was facing the entire room, flickered to life. The first image appeared. It was the screenshot from Jessica's email, the one showing Chloe's name on Mark's blocked contacts list. A confused murmur went through the room. Chloe's smile froze on her face. Her eyes darted from the screen to David, panic flickering in their depths. Before she could speak, David pressed the button again. The following image filled the screen. It was the photo of Mark and his very pregnant wife, Jessica, smiling on a mountaintop in Oregon. The room fell into a sudden, deafening silence. Everyone stared at the screen. They saw the happy couple. They saw the woman's undeniable, real pregnancy. Then their eyes moved to Chloe, to her fashionable dress and her perfectly flat stomach. The house of cards trembled, and with one final quiet click of the remote, David made it all come crashing down. The last image appeared. It was my ultrasound photo, my beautiful, perfect, grainy photo. And underneath, David had added a simple, clear caption in Photoshop. It read, "Sarah and David's baby, due April 16th. The silence in the room was no longer confused. It was heavy, suffocating, filled with a dawning collective horror. No one looked at us. Every single eye in that room was fixed on Chloe. Her face, which had been a mask of triumph moments before, had crumbled. It was a ruin of shock, terror, and pure, unadulterated humiliation. The lie was dead, and everyone had just watched it die. The silence in that room was the loudest thing I had ever heard. It was an active, breathing silence, thick with accusation and shattered illusion. Chloe stood frozen, her hand still holding the wrapping paper, her face a canvas of pure devastation. The bright, bubbly persona she had so carefully constructed had evaporated, leaving behind someone small, terrified, and utterly exposed. It was Martha who broke the spell. She let out a slight, wounded sound like a gasp of pain. "David," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is this? What have you done?" She wasn't looking at Chloe. She was looking at her son, her eyes filled with a desperate, pleading confusion. She couldn't comprehend the lie, so she was lashing out at the person who had revealed it. David didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The evidence was glowing on the screen for everyone to see. "I've done nothing but tell the truth, Mom," he said, his voice firm but laced with a deep sadness. "It's time we all saw the truth." He turned his gaze to his sister. "Chloe," he said, and her name hung in the air like a sentence. "It's over. The story, the lies. It's all over." Chloe finally moved. She dropped the box as if it had burned her. Her eyes, wide and frantic, darted around the room from face to horrified face. She was looking for an ally, a friendly eye, someone who would take her side. She found none. She had made everyone a part of her audience, and now her audience was her jury. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. A dry, ragged sob escaped her lips, and then she did the only thing she had left to do. She ran. She pushed past a stunned cousin, her flowing dress catching on a chair, and fled out the back door, slamming it shut behind her. The aftermath was a slow, awkward unraveling. The party dissolved in a series of mumbled excuses and averted eyes. No one knew what to say. They had come to celebrate life and had instead borne witness to a social death. One by one, they gathered their things and slipped away, leaving David, Martha, and me standing in the wreckage of the celebration. Martha had sunk into a chair, her face in her hand. She was weeping, not the happy tears of a proud grandmother, but the heartbroken sobs of a mother who had just seen the depth of her child's illness. "I don't understand," she wept. "Why would she do this?" "Why? Because she's not well, Mom," David said, his voice gentle as he knelt beside her. "She needs help, real help, not us enabling her fantasies." I went to them, placing a hand on David's shoulder. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a profound aching sadness for all of us, for the family that was broken, for the mother who was grieving a reality that had never existed, and even in a strange, distant way for Chloe. I couldn't imagine the depth of the emptiness inside her that would drive her to such a desperate, destructive act. In the days that followed, we tried to pick up the pieces. David and I focused on creating a cocoon of peace for ourselves, for our baby. We turned off our phones. We went for long walks. We talked about names, about nursery colors, about all the simple, beautiful things that Chloe's drama had overshadowed. We were reclaiming our joy one moment at a time. The family, however, was in turmoil. Chloe had disappeared. She wasn't answering her phone. She wasn't at her apartment. Martha was beside herself with worry, a volatile mixture of anger at the deception and terror for her daughter's well-being. It was Kevin, the kind ex-boyfriend, who finally gave us a lead. He called David, his voice hesitant. "I know you guys have every reason to hate her," he said, "but I got a text from a friend of hers. She's staying at a cheap motel out by the highway. She's a mess." David and his mother went to find her. I stayed home. This was their battle to fight, their family to mend. I had played my part. My role now was to protect the new life I was carrying, to shield it from the stress and the sorrow. David called me a few hours later. His voice was heavy. "We found her," he said. "It's bad, Sarah. The room is a disaster. She hasn't eaten. She just sits there staring at the wall." He paused. "She finally admitted it. All of it. The lies, the fake relationship, everything," he said. She said she just wanted what you have. She saw how happy we were and she couldn't stand being on the outside of it. So she tried to build a life just like it for herself." The confession was so simple, so pathetic, it was heartbreaking. She wasn't a monster. She was just a profoundly broken person, drowning in her own inadequacy. "What happens now?" I asked. "Mom is with her," he said. "We're going to get her into a program, a real one, with therapists who can help her. It's going to be a long road, but it's a start." That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The storm had passed. The public consequence of Chloe's actions wasn't jeers or ridicule from the people at the party. It was the quiet, devastating implosion of her own fantasy world. An implosion so total that it finally forced her to confront the reality of her own unhappiness. The justice wasn't in her humiliation. It was in the chance, however slim, that she might finally get the help she so desperately needed. Our action hadn't been an act of revenge. It had been an act of painful, necessary truth-telling. And sometimes the truth, as brutal as it is the only thing that can set you free. The months that followed were a time of quiet rebuilding. Chloe was admitted to a residential treatment center an hour away, a place specializing in behavioral and personality disorders. The family drama, which had been a raging fire, now became a low, steady ember of concern. There were no more explosive revelations, only the slow, arduous work of healing. Martha drove to visit Chloe every weekend, her face a mixture of hope and exhaustion. David spoke with his sister's therapist regularly, trying to understand the complex workings of her mind while also learning to establish healthy boundaries for himself and for them. I kept my distance, not out of anger anymore, but out of a deep-seated need for self-preservation. My pregnancy, which had begun under such a dark cloud, deserved to continue in the sun. I focused on the miracle inside me. I felt the first flutter of movement, a tiny, secret tap from within that felt like a promise. I attended my appointments, and each time I saw our baby on the screen, growing, thriving, real, It was a reclamation of my truth. David and I found a new rhythm. The crisis had forged a new depth in our relationship. We had faced something ugly and surreal, and we had done it as a team. The trust between us was absolute. We were a fortress, and I felt safe within our walls. As my belly grew, so did my peace. The world outside our home seemed to fade in importance. The gossip that had surely followed the disastrous party never reached my ears. Our faithful friends had quietly rallied around us, offering support without ever needing to rehash the drama. They brought us meals, helped David in the garden, and talked about the baby with a genuine joy that healed the raw places in my heart. They respected our silence, and for that I was endlessly grateful. One crisp autumn afternoon, David came home from a visit with his mother. He looked pensive. "I got a letter," he said, pulling a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. "It's from Chloe. The therapist suggested she write it." My heart did a little nervous flip. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear from her. "You don't have to read it if you don't want to," he said, seeing the look on my face. "No," I said, taking a breath. "It's okay. What does it say?" He unfolded the letter. It was written in Chloe's familiar, loopy handwriting. "Dear Sarah and David," he read. "I don't know how to start this. I know sorry isn't a big enough word for what I did. There is no excuse for it. My therapist is helping me understand that my brain doesn't work the way it's supposed to. For years, I've been building stories to make myself feel less empty. When you announced your pregnancy, you had everything I ever wanted. A husband who loves you, a home, a future. And I felt so far away from all of it. Instead of being happy for you, I tried to take it. I tried to wear your life like a costume because I didn't know how to build one of my own." David's voice cracked on the last few words. He paused, clearing his throat before he continued. "I hurt you. I violated your joy and your privacy in the most terrible way. I also hurt Kevin and my mom and a couple in Oregon who I had no right to drag into my mess. I live with the shame of that every single day. I don't expect you to forgive me. Maybe you never will, but I wanted you to know that I am working. I am trying to learn how to live in the real world, not the one I make up in my head. I hope one day I can be a person who deserves to be in your lives. I hope I can be a good aunt to my niece or nephew." He finished reading and we sat in silence. The letter was not a magic wand. It didn't erase the pain or the bizarre trauma of the past few months, but it was something. It was a flicker of self-awareness. It was the first honest thing I had heard from Chloe in a long time. "What do you think?" David asked, his eyes searching mine. "I think," I said slowly, "that it's a start, and I think she's right. I don't forgive her yet, but I'm glad she's trying." The rest of my pregnancy passed peacefully. Spring arrived, and with it, the birth of our son Leo. He was perfect. He had David's calm eyes and a tiny, fierce grip that held onto my finger as if he'd never let go. Holding him in my arms, all the lingering shadows of Chloe's deception vanished completely. Nothing mattered but this tiny, warm, breathing reality. He was my story. He was my truth. When Leo was 3 months old, Chloe was released from the residential program. She moved into a small apartment and continued with outpatient therapy. He got a quiet job at a bookstore. We heard from Martha that she was sticking to her routine and was stable. One Saturday, Martha called. "Chloe would like to see the baby," she said, her voice cautious. "She says she'll understand if you're not ready. She doesn't want to push." David and I talked about it for a long time. The protective walls around our new family were high, but we knew that hiding from the world wasn't the answer either. A family isn't something you can cut pieces out of without leaving a scar. "On our terms," I said finally, "here, in our home, for 1 hour." The day she came over, I was a bundle of nerves. David held Leo, bouncing him gently as we waited. The doorbell rang. The woman who stood on our porch was not the Chloe I remembered. The firework was gone. A simple gray sweater had replaced the vibrant, dramatic colors she used to wear. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was pale and free of makeup. She looked quiet. She didn't rush in. She stood on the doormat, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. Her eyes were fixed on the small bundle in David's arms. They were filled with a profound, unreadable sadness. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "Come in, Chloe," David said gently. She stepped inside, looking around our home as if seeing it for the first time. She didn't ask to hold Leo. She just sat on the edge of the armchair, a respectful distance away. She spoke quietly, asking about his sleep, about his favorite toys. There were no dramatic stories, no attempts to pull the focus to herself. He was just present. Before she left, she turned to me. "Sarah," she said, her voice barely audible. "Thank you for letting me come." I just nodded. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't a joyful reconciliation. It was a fragile and tentative first step on a long and uncertain road. But as I watched her walk away, I felt a weight I didn't even know I was still carrying begin to lift. The resolution wasn't about a grand moment of forgiveness. It was in the quiet acceptance of what was, and the cautious hope for what could be. It was in seeing a broken person trying, however imperfectly, to piece herself back together. And it was in the realization that my own healing was not dependent on her, but on my ability to finally let go and focus on the beautiful, real, and miraculous life I held in my arms. Life is quieter now. Leo is a toddler, a whirlwind of happy energy who fills our home with laughter and a delightful chaos that is all his own. Our garden is his favorite place, and I often watch from the kitchen window as he follows his father around, his small hands patting the soil, learning the names of the flowers. Our life is a collection of these small, beautiful, ordinary moments, real, and I am so grateful for its reality. Chloe is still on her journey. We see her at family gatherings which are smaller and more subdued than they used to be. There are good days and bad days. Sometimes I see a flicker of the old, attention-seeking Chloe, a hint of a story that seems a little too polished, and I feel a familiar knot of anxiety. But then she catches herself, or her mother gives her a quiet, warning look, and she retreats into the calm, mindful person she is trying so hard to be. The healing of a family, I've learned, is not a straight line. It's a messy, complicated dance of progress and retreat. I don't know if I will ever fully trust her. The scar from her betrayal is now a part of our family's story, a reminder of how easily reality can be fractured by desperation. But I have chosen to move forward with a cautious grace, not for her sake but for mine and for my son's. He deserves a family that is trying to be whole, however imperfectly. Looking back, the rage and the hurt I felt were valid. They were a necessary fire. But what I hold on to now is not the memory of the lie, but the profound strength that came from defending the truth. We discovered a resilience in our marriage we never knew we had, and we learned that protecting our peace is the most important work we will ever do. Chloe's actions, as painful as they were, taught me to cherish the simple, unadorned truth of my own life, to find the miracle not in a grand announcement, but in a quiet moment, in a shared smile, in the steady, beating heart of the family I have built. It makes you wonder about the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we tell others. Sometimes the line between the two can become dangerously blurred. We all want our lives to be extraordinary, to be seen, but at what cost? I often think about that moment, staring at my phone in the dark, and the choice I had to make. Would you have done what I did? Or is there a different path to finding the truth? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story.